On a quiet stretch of highway, a car explodes in flames, and one man runs toward it. Jake Turner, a small-town mechanic with a haunted past, doesn't hesitate when he sees the wreck. He risks everything to save the unconscious woman trapped inside, dragging her to safety just moments before the vehicle erupts in fire. What he doesn't know is that the woman he saved is Elena Voss, a billionaire tech mogul who had gone off the radar, and what she doesn't know is the face of her rescuer. While Elena recovers in secrecy, Jake returns to his normal life, refusing recognition or reward. But when Elena finally discovers the man who saved her life, gratitude isn't enough. She sends her private jet with a message: "Let me thank you properly." From a near-death rescue to a high-flying reunion, what starts as a thank you turns into something far deeper. As media frenzy brews, past scars resurface, and danger strikes again, Jake and Elena must navigate the line between fate and choice, gratitude and love. He saved her once, but can she save him in return? This isn't just a story of heroism. It's about second chances, unexpected bonds, and the fire that brings two lives crashing together. The sun was just starting to dip below the tree line, casting a golden hue across the two-lane highway that cut through the Tennessee hills. Jake Turner had just finished a long shift at his garage. Grease under his nails, sweat soaked into his collar, the kind of tiredness that made your bones ache. He had his windows down, letting the warm summer wind whip through his truck as classic rock hummed from the radio. Just another Tuesday, until he smelled the smoke. It hit him suddenly, sharp, acrid, unmistakable. Jake sat up straighter, instinct replacing exhaustion. Around the bend he spotted it, a black column of smoke curling into the sky like a signal flare. He eased off the gas, then slammed the brakes as he rounded the corner. There, off the shoulder, was a luxury car crumpled around a tree, engine engulfed in flames. Fire licked up the hood, popping the windshield in a spray of sparks. Tires burned, metal groaned, time slowed. Jake threw his truck into park and bolted. Most people freeze. They watch, they film, they wait for sirens. Jake ran, always had. The heat hit him before he reached the vehicle, hot enough to steal his breath. He circled to the driver's side. The door was bent in, the glass spiderwebbed. Inside, he could see a woman slumped over the steering wheel. Blood matted her temple. Her chest rose, barely. "Hey!" Jake shouted, pounding the glass. "Can you hear me?" No response. He grabbed the door handle. It didn't budge. Cursing, he scanned the wreck. The passenger side was worse, crushed inward from the impact. The flames were spreading. Jake yanked off his work jacket, wrapped it around his arm, and punched the window. Once, twice. On the third hit, the glass gave way in a spray of shards. Jake reached inside, coughing, eyes burning. He undid the seatbelt, tugged at the woman's limp body. She was light but dead weight. Somewhere behind him, the fire cracked louder. The engine sputtered, a warning. With a primal yell, Jake pulled her free and staggered backward, nearly falling. He ran, cradling her in his arms just as the fuel tank caught. The explosion lit the evening sky. Jake hit the ground, shielding the woman with his body. Debris rained down, plastic, metal, fire. His ears rang, his lungs screamed, but when he looked down, she was still breathing. "Stay with me," he rasped, brushing her hair from her face. "You're okay. You're safe." Sirens wailed in the distance. Finally, he didn't wait. He flagged down the first fire truck, handing the woman off to the medics before collapsing to his knees on the gravel shoulder. They tried to take him too, but he waved them off. "I'm not hurt," he said. "Just tired. Jake sat on the back of his truck as the paramedics worked. The flames were out now, just a smoldering wreck and the stink of scorched rubber. One of the firefighters approached him, offering water. "Hell of a thing you did," the man said. "Most would have waited for us." Jake just shrugged. Didn't seem right to leave her there. "Know who she is?" the firefighter asked. Jake shook his head. The man nodded toward the ambulance. "That's Elena Voss, the tech billionaire. Vanished a few months ago, thought she was hiding out or dead." Jake raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Money didn't impress him. People did. "She's lucky," the firefighter added. "You saved her life." Jake watched as the ambulance pulled away, red lights fading into the dark. Lucky, maybe, but something told him luck had nothing to do with it. He stayed until the scene cleared, then climbed into his truck. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind nothing but silence and smoke on his clothes. He didn't know who Elena Voss really was. He didn't care. To him, she was just someone who needed saving, and sometimes that was all that mattered. Elena Voss woke to the rhythmic beep of a heart monitor and the sterile scent of antiseptic. Her throat was dry, her body sore, and her mind blank. A nurse noticed her stirring and rushed to her side. "Ms. Voss, you're at St. Mary's Medical. You were in an accident. You're stable now." Elena blinked slowly. "Accident?" Images flickered, trees rushing past, the steering wheel jerking, then heat, pressure, and nothing. Her voice came out as a whisper. "Was anyone else hurt?" "No," the nurse said gently. "A man pulled you out, saved your life, disappeared before we could get his name." Elena's brow furrowed. "What man?" "He dragged you out just before the car exploded. If he hadn't—" The nurse trailed off, squeezing Elena's hand. Elena closed her eyes. In the blackness behind her lids, she could almost see it. Fire curling, smoke choking her, then arms, strong, urgent, pulling her from the dark. A voice, gravelly, assuring, "You're okay, you're safe." But no face, just flame, pain, and a whisper of salvation. Across town, Jake Turner sat in his garage's back office, tuning a carburetor with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. He'd showered 3 times and still smelled the smoke. He hadn't told anyone. Not his co-worker Ray, not the coffee shop girl who always asked about his day. It wasn't something he wanted to talk about or relive. The local news hadn't picked it up, but the national media did. Jake stared at the screen on from his workbench. Elena Voss, billionaire survivor, mystery rescuer still unknown. He turned it off. That night, Jake dreamed of the fire again. Only this time, he didn't get her out. The press swarmed the hospital the moment Elena's identity leaked. Reporters lined up like vultures at the gates, drones circling overhead, flashing headlines about her miraculous survival. But inside her private recovery suite, Elena wanted only one thing: answers. Her assistant, Devin, stepped into the room with a tablet in hand. "Still no ID on the man. We checked traffic cams, hospital records, highway patrol logs, nothing. Just his truck briefly caught on a dash cam, but the plates were unreadable." "No name?" Elena asked, frustrated. "None. He walked away before the paramedics even finished patching you up." Elena stared at the ceiling. She couldn't let this go, not just because he saved her life, but because something about that moment felt unfinished. "I need to find him, Devin. I need to thank him properly." Devin gave a knowing smile. "You mean send him a signed book and a fruit basket?" Elena raised an eyebrow. "I mean send a jet and maybe change his life." 3 days later, Elena was discharged. Under the radar, as always. She left out the back wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, avoiding the cameras. Her company, Voss Dynamics, issued a brief statement about her time away and emphasized her return to leadership. In truth, Elena didn't care about the press. Not right now. She cared about the mechanic. She remembered his voice, not just the words, but how they made her feel. Safe, grounded, not like a CEO, not like a billionaire, just like a human being. Miles away, Jake lay under the hood of a '67 Mustang, half listening to Ray rant about spark plugs. When the bell above the garage door jingled, a tall man in a black suit stepped in, looking wildly out of place among the motor oil and engine grease. "Jake Turner?" he asked. Jake stood slowly, wiping his hands. "Who's asking?" "I'm with Ms. Elena Voss. She'd like to see you." Jake blinked. "Why?" "She says you saved her life." Jake started, uncertain. He didn't do what he did for attention. He didn't want thanks, but something in the man's voice and the memory of those frightened eyes nudged at him. "She sent her jet," the man added. Ray let out a low whistle. Jake hesitated, then grabbed a rag and tossed it over his shoulder. "Guess I better change." As Jake stepped onto the tarmac later that evening, the sun was setting once more. Burnt orange against a clear sky. The jet gleamed, sleek and silent, like something out of a dream he never allowed himself to have. At the top of the steps stood Elena, no longer bruised and bloodied, but radiant, alive. "Mr. Turner," she said, eyes locked with him. Jake stopped at the top, lips quivering. "Most people send flowers." She held out her hand. "I don't do most people." The story went viral before the jet touched down again. Someone had caught a blurry photo of Jake boarding, and the internet filled in the blanks, like it always did, spinning stories from shadows. "Mystery Mechanic," they called him. Headlines screamed, "Elena Voss's savior found. Flies private jet to reunion." Jake hated it. The moment he stepped off the plane, he regretted it. Paparazzi were already sniffing around the airport. Elena had taken care of logistics, cleared the runway, kept him in a luxury car with tinted windows, and sent him straight to a private estate. But none of that dulled the noise outside. Inside it was different, quiet, peaceful even. The house was stunning, glass and stone carved into the side of a mountain, every window framing something wild and endless. But Jake didn't care about the view. He watched her. Elena was quieter in person than he remembered. Not cold, just precise. Every word considered, every motion is deliberate. But when she looked at him, her eyes softened, like she couldn't believe he was real. "I didn't think I'd ever find you," she said over tea that night. Jake shrugged. "I didn't think you'd bother. You pulled me out of fire," she said, meeting his gaze. "That's not the kind of thing you forget." She told him about her crash, how she'd been avoiding the press, escaping a stalker, driving alone to get a moment of peace. The car had been tampered with. The accident wasn't so accidental after all. Jake listened in silence. He wasn't the type to pry, but every word added weight to what he'd done. He hadn't just saved a life, he'd interrupted something darker. "Why didn't you stay?" she asked. "Wasn't about staying," he said. "Was about doing the right thing." She looked down, thoughtful. "I want to do something right too." He arched an eyebrow. "Like flying a stranger around the country?" She smiled, a small, tired thing. "No, like saying thank you the way someone should when their life's been handed back to them." They didn't talk about it much after that. Not the fire, not the hospital. The silence between them wasn't awkward. It was understood. Some things didn't need to be revisited to be remembered. Jake stayed the weekend, not because of the luxury or the view, but because of her. They sat on the balcony one evening, sharing bourbon and stories. She asked about engines. He asked about satellites. Their worlds weren't supposed to align, but somehow, in those quiet moments, they did. By Monday, the media frenzy had intensified. Jake's face was on morning shows. He'd never taken a selfie in his life, but now strangers had AI-enhanced renderings of his smile. When he boarded the jet home, she gave him a small box. He frowned. "You didn't have to?" "I didn't," she said. "I wanted to." Inside was a ring, titanium, brushed steel with a tiny inscription inside, "From fire, something forged." Jake stared at it for a long moment. "This isn't a proposal, right?" She laughed. "No, it's a promise." Jake didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. Then he pocketed the ring, stepped onto the plane, and flew back to the life he knew. Smaller, quieter, simpler, but not untouched. Jake's garage smelled the same, oil, steel, and yesterday's coffee, but something in him had changed. He kept the ring in his toolbox right next to his socket set. Sometimes he'd open the drawer just to look at it. He never wore jewelry, still didn't, but it wasn't about wearing it, it was about knowing it was there. The buzz died down slowly. Reporters gave up. New stories replaced his. The town stopped whispering. Life tried to go back to normal, only it didn't. Ray noticed first. "You're quieter," he said one afternoon, wiping down the hood of an old truck. Jake just grunted. But it was true. He couldn't shake the memory of her laughter, the way her voice dropped when she told him secrets that weren't meant for anyone else. He found himself checking the news for her name just to be sure. Then one night, he got a call. "Hey," Elena said, voice tinny through the phone. "We're launching a new solar tech line. I want you to see it." "I'm not a suit," he replied. "I don't need a suit," she said. "I need you." He didn't say yes, but he didn't say no either. 3 days later, the jet came back. It hovered on the edge of Jake's world, like a secret he didn't know how to keep. Same pilot, same smooth glide across the tarmac behind the county fairgrounds. Ray just stood in the garage doorway, chewing a toothpick and grinning like he'd seen a ghost. "Gonna run away with her this time?" he asked. Jake shot him a look. "Ain't running, just looking." He packed light. He always did. The ring stayed in his pocket. The flight wasn't long, but it felt different this time. Not like an escape, more like a pull, like something was drawing him closer rather than pushing him away. Elena met him at a private airstrip outside San Diego. This time there were no formal clothes, no guards, no estate. Just her, jeans, boots, windswept hair. She looked normal and completely out of place, still. But when she smiled, the world got quiet. "I thought you'd say no," she said, as they walked to a waiting SUV. "I almost did," he admitted. "Then I figured you'd just keep sending jets till I gave in." She smirked. "Maybe." The facility was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. Glass ceilings, floating solar arrays, robots gliding between labs. It was futuristic, clinical, but there was something human in it. Maybe it was Elena. She introduced him to a few engineers, walked him through a floor of experimental tech, let him hold a solar cell thinner than a dollar bill. At one point she caught him staring. "What?" she asked. Jake shrugged. "Just wondering how I ended up here, with you." She leaned against a railing, eyes fixed on the skyline. "Sometimes I wonder that too." There was a pause. Neither of them needed to fill it. That night she invited him to dinner, Not at a restaurant, but on the roof of the facility. A table set under string lights, tacos in paper wrappers, a bottle of beer each. "I told my board I'm taking a sabbatical," she said, tearing into a carne asada. Jake raised an eyebrow. "You're what?" 3 months, maybe more. They think I need to process the trauma. I think I just need to remember what the hell matters. Jake nodded slowly. "And what matters?" She looked up. "That someone pulled me from a fire and didn't ask for a thing in return. Maybe I've spent too long building a world where no one does that." They didn't kiss. Not yet. But they looked at each other for a long time, longer than two people should, if they planned to walk away. Jake didn't plan to stay more than 2 days, but 2 became 5, then 7. They didn't talk about feelings or fate or what any of this meant. They just were, sharing space, sharing silence. They worked on machines together, Jake teaching her how to change a filter, Elena explaining renewable fuel systems like she was talking about poetry. One afternoon she said, "I've been thinking." Jake looked up from the engine he was cleaning. "I don't want this to be temporary." He froze, cloth in hand. "You mean the project?" "I mean this, you and me." He didn't know what to say. For a moment he wanted to run, but something kept him there, something he didn't have a name for. "Are you sure about that?" he asked. "No," she said honestly, "but I'm willing to find out." That night they walked through the campus garden. She stopped near a bench and pulled something from her coat. Another box, smaller. Jake groaned. "You're bringing me another ring?" She smiled and opened it. Inside was the same ring he'd left in his toolbox, but this one had a second inscription etched beside the first. "Return when ready." Jake looked at her. "You didn't wear the first one," she said. "Thought you might want another shot." He slipped it on this time, no words, just a quiet motion, a silent vow between them. And for the first time in a long time, Jake Turner let someone in. It didn't take long for Jake to realize Elena Voss was more than a CEO. Beneath the headlines and boardroom polish, she was a builder of things, of ideas, of walls. Some still stood between them. One evening, as they sat in her garden under humming lights, Jake asked, "Why'd you disappear before the crash?" Elena was quiet for a beat. "I had enemies, not business competitors, real enemies, the kind who don't care if you breathe or burn." He waited. "I was working on a decentralized energy system, off-grid solar tech. Could have wiped out billions in utility profits. Threats started coming, emails, packages. The brake line in my car was just the last one." Jake leaned back slowly. "That's not just sabotage. That's a hit." "Exactly. And someone helped cover it up. The police never found anything solid, so I left. I needed to disappear until I didn't." He looked at her, heart heavy. "And now?" She held his gaze. "Now I want to stop hiding, and I don't want to do it alone." Jake understood. He didn't belong in her world, not really, but she wasn't asking him to belong. She was asking him to stand beside her. "I'm not a suit," he said, "not a bodyguard either." She smiled. "You're something else, something honest. I've had enough of people who want things from me." And Jake? He wanted nothing, and that made him everything. That night he lay in the guest room of her home, if you could call a minimalist mansion tucked into coastal cliffs a home. He stared at the ring on his finger, thumb tracing the edge of the engraving. From fire something was forged. Return when ready. He didn't know if he was ready. A week later, Elena took him to a company gala. The kind of event where every attendee had a net worth and every smile was fake. Jake hated it the moment he stepped inside. He felt like a broken wrench in a room full of lasers, but Elena didn't leave his side. "This," she whispered as photographers flashed around them, "is why I never bring anyone." Jake's jaw clenched. "Then why now?" She looked up at him, voice steady. "Because I needed to remind myself I still get to choose who I trust." They didn't stay long enough to be seen, long enough for social media to light up with theories, long enough for Jake to hear someone mutter, "What's a guy like that doing with her?" Back in the car, he stayed quiet until Elena reached over and took his hand. "I'm not ashamed of you," she said. Jake exhaled slowly. "I'm not ashamed either. I just don't belong in your world." She turned to him. "Then maybe it's time I step into yours." A few days later, they returned to Jake's town. It was smaller than she remembered, quiet, warm. Jake's garage sat just where it always had, tucked between a diner and a bait shop. The locals started, of course, they always would, but Elena just smiled and nodded and shook hands like she'd lived there all her life. Jake watched her under the hood of a Chevy, grease on her wrist, ponytail loose, asking Ray for a wrench like it was the most natural thing in the world. She belonged, not because she fit, but because she chose to. That night she gave him another box. Third one. Jake laughed. "What is it this time, matching tattoos?" "Open it." Inside was a ring, but not for him. "It's yours," she said quietly. "If you ever feel like you belong here, with me, not a proposal, a promise." Jake didn't touch it, not yet. "Still scared?" she asked. He nodded. "Me too." She slipped it back into the box. "Then we'll be scared together." Jake smiled at that, because finally, after all the fire and silence and smoke, someone understood. The storm didn't come with thunder, it came with headlines. By morning, Jake's phone buzzed non-stop. News articles, tweets. Mechanic boyfriend of tech billionaire has criminal record. From Greece to gold, Elena Voss's shocking romance. Jake Turner, hero or hustler? He didn't even know someone had dug that deep. The trespassing arrest from when he was 17, the bar fight that landed him a night in jail, a DUI his cousin got in his truck and never cleared his name on, and it was all there, amplified, weaponized. Jake turned off his phone. He knew who leaked it. Voss Dynamics was full of power brokers who didn't like the idea of a billionaire sharing oxygen with someone who couldn't spell equity portfolio. They didn't care that he'd pulled her from a burning car. They cared that he didn't have a LinkedIn. When Elena called that morning, he didn't answer. He knew she'd be furious, not at him, but at them. And that made it worse. He didn't want her fighting his battles. He didn't want her giving speeches about how love transcends background. He didn't want to be a PR project. So he did the thing he always did when the pressure got too loud. He disappeared. He packed a bag, left a note at the shop, and drove. He didn't know where he was going, only that he needed to get there alone. Elena didn't panic. She didn't send drones or hire investigators or call in favors. She let Jake run because she understood. Still, it hurt. Devin slammed a folder onto her desk that afternoon. "We traced the leaks. An anonymous board member leaked the arrest records to discredit him." Elena didn't flinch. "Fire them quietly, then bury the story." Devin arched an eyebrow. "You think that's going to fix it?" "No," Elena said, "but Jake needs to know I didn't let it slide." She canceled her next 3 meetings, ignored the investors' summit, and took a walk through the garden barefoot. That was something Jake had taught her, to breathe with her feet in the dirt. A week passed. No word. The second week, her driver handed her a small envelope. No return address. Just her name. Inside was a Polaroid. Jake, standing in front of an old diner on Route 68, holding a cup of coffee, looking tired, but alive. On the back, still figuring it out, still thinking about you. She smiled quietly, painfully, wrote a note of her own, send it through the same back channels. I'm not going anywhere. Jake read it at a truck stop the next day. Simple, steady, just like her. He stared out the window for a long time. Maybe he didn't have to outrun it. Maybe he could return to it. Jake came back on a Tuesday. No warning, no announcement. Just walked into the shop like he hadn't left. Ray looked up from a toolbox and blinked. Are you back for good? Jake shrugged. Guess we'll see. Ray tossed him a wrench. Told ya. Women like that don't forget men like you. He didn't call Elena that night. He drove out to the hill behind town and sat under the stars. The ring she'd given him sat on the dash, still unopened. He didn't put it on, not yet, but he held it in his hand, and for once, that felt like enough. The fire started just after midnight. Jake was asleep in the apartment above the garage when the smell hit him, burning plastic, sharp and chemical, not grease, not oil, something intentional. He bolted upright, grabbed his boots, and was down the stairs before his brain caught up. Flames clawed across the back wall, licking at the shelves of supplies. The power was already out. His hands moved on instinct, extinguisher first, then the hose, until the heat pushed him back. Too late. He stumbled outside, coughing, staring as his garage, his whole damn life, burned from the inside out. By the time the fire trucks arrived, it was over. What wasn't ash was scorched beyond saving. Jake didn't cry. Not then. He just stood there, barefoot on gravel, smoke curling around him, and said nothing. Not even when the black SUV pulled up. Not even when she stepped out. Elena moved to his side without a word. Her eyes scanned the wreckage. She didn't ask what happened. She already knew. This wasn't an accident, Jake said finally. No, she said, it wasn't. He turned to her, jaw tight. This happened because of you, because of us. She didn't flinch. No, this happened because some people don't like it when a man does something heroic and doesn't ask for power in return. Jake looked down. I didn't want this. I know, she said, but you have it, whether you like it or not. She reached into her coat, pulled out the ring box, not the one from before, a new one, dark wood, smooth and warm. I didn't come to give you this, she said. I came because I heard there was a fire and I was afraid I'd never see you again. He opened the box. Inside was the same ring, simple, forged. The engraving now complete. From fire, something forged. Return when ready. Stay whole. Jake stared at it for a long time, then he put it on. I don't have much left, he said quietly. You have me, she said. They spent the night at her hotel just outside town. No press, no noise, just silence and adrenaline and what came after. In the morning, Jake stood on the balcony watching the sun rise over smoke-stained rooftops. Elena joined him with 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to him. He took it. Garage is gone, he said. We'll rebuild it, she replied. I'm not used to it. Get used to it. He turned to her. What happens now? She smiled. We start over. The town rallied. That surprised Jake more than anything. People brought tools, scrap metal, and offers of help. Some apologized for the whispers. Others just said, You're a good man, Jake. We should have seen that sooner. Elena didn't play the billionaire. She wore jeans, tied her hair up, and handed out lemonade to volunteers. Together they cleaned the wreckage, brick by brick. And when it was done, they laid the first stone of what would become a new garage. One with solar panels on the roof, one built for tomorrow. Jake didn't ask for anything more, but one afternoon, Elena stood beside him as the new sign was mounted. Turner and Voss, Auto and Innovation. He looked at her. She shrugged. I figured you could fix cars. I'll fix the future. He laughed. Hell of a name. She smiled. Hell of a team. On the 1-year anniversary of the fire, the two of them sat on the garage roof, legs swinging over the edge, watching the last colors of evening burn down. Jake turned to her. Have you ever thought about that day? Every day. Still scared? Sometimes. He nodded. Me too. She leaned her head on his shoulder. But it's easier when you're not scared alone. Jake didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He just wrapped his arm around her, the ring cool on his finger, the night warm around them, and the future wide open ahead. From the fire something was forged, and this time it was built to last.